Welcome everyone for our second day of webinars, making part of our celebration week at Luiz de Queiroz College of Agriculture. So it's very nice to be here again with you to make this second day of webinars. So our dean, our direction, and our colleagues at Exalc, we decided to explore the thematic bio issues, bio products in agriculture. So how to use biological products in agriculture. And this is going to be a whole week discussion in our campus. So we started yesterday with an event in Portuguese for a broad audience. And today we start our webinars, prepare it together with our A5 colleagues. So for people that are not used to the term, the A5 means that we are an alliance with the 5 most important colleges of agriculture worldwide. So Exalc is part of that. It's very nice to be part of that with people from Wageningen University in the Netherlands, the UC Davis in US, the Cornell University, and also Cal, the Chinese Agriculture University. So all these 5 universities, they dedicated time, they elect some names to be together to join this week in specific discussions. This will be the first day of these events. So it's nice to present you the team that you have today for this discussion. So the thematics that we elected for today is biological resources, improving crop efficiency. So it's a very broad theme. So it will be that each colleague will work in different distinct thematic issues, different points. So we are going to put this together in a nice discussion, and it's fully open for contribution. So send us your questions through the systems that you are watching this event. I will present the 3 colleagues that I have today to this event. And the first one will be Dr. Martin van Ittersen. He is a professor in plant production system at Wageningen University. So Martin, very nice to have you here. So I studied in Wageningen for 1.5 years in total almost. It was a great time of my life. Always nice to see people from Ruhr connect with us. Dr. Martin will talk about sustainable intensification and circularity agricultural production. So I'm willing to see your presentation. And then I want to invite Dr. Lixing Wan, who is a professor in plant nutrition at China Agricultural University. He is focused on improvement of crop and nutrient use efficiency using physiology, genetics, and molecular approaches. So today he will talk a little bit about his work on integrated approach to improve crop and nutrient use efficiency in China. A very broad theme, so it's a challenge, but very much important for our discussion today. And the third colleague I want to invite is an alumni of our school, so it's very nice to have you here, Dr. Jorge Rodrigues, a professor at UC Davis. So he's a former student of our campus. He did a graduation at Exalc, and now he's a professor at the Department of Land, Air, and Water Resources at the University of California in Davis. And he's also a soil microbiologist, interested in land use change and agricultural soil health initiatives. He'll talk about soil plant human health connections. A very nice thematic to join the discussion. And it'll be the last one to show some slides, to say some words. I'll try to explore the thematic integrative microbiology in modern agriculture. So you see that you are going to build a nice story. I hope we can do this attempt in the right time, because we don't have like the full day to talk about it. The issues are important, the subjects are very broad, so it's challenging to summarize it, but I know you can do your best. So after this initial words, the opening, I think it's time to make the presentations. After that, you have time for discussions. And then I will invite the first speaker, the first colleague to talk, Dr. Martin van Ittersen. We're planning to have 7 to 10 minutes each one to present our words, our slides, and then we'll go to discussion. Dr. Martin, again, thank you for your acceptance to be here and your dedication to prepare the presentations. And feel free, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fernando. Can you see my screen? Yes, I think. So I hope you can all hear me. I would like to introduce, is that correct, Fernando? You can all hear me?
Yeah, it's perfect. If you have some problem, I'll say something. Don't worry about it.
Good. Please do so. I can't see you, but it's nice to interact with you, and I hope I can address some of your questions later on. First, I would like to introduce two principles which I think are highly related to the topic of today: biological resources, improving crop efficiency. That's our topic. And I would like to introduce two principles: circularity and diversity. But before doing so, I think it's extremely important to recognize, to acknowledge that in different parts of the world, priorities can differ a lot. And I'm speaking mostly today, I think, from the perspective of Europe, and that could also be the United States, could partly be countries like Brazil or Australia. But I'm certainly not so much speaking from the perspective of Africa, for instance, where an increase in production is really the top priority to keep up with population growth and with dietary change. But I think a continent like Europe can and should play a leading role in developing cleaner, more sustainable, and today I will introduce more circular food systems. So I will focus on that the priority for Europe and for other parts of the world which have more or less similar priorities. Why is that important? Because our food system is playing a major role in environmental issues. It's taking close to 40% of the total land use. It's taking about a third of the acidification. It's responsible for close to 80% of eutrophication. And you can see the other environmental issues. In this graph, the darker part, dark green part, is the share of animal-sourced food. And the lighter green color is the rest of the food, so the plant-based products. And you can see that animals play a very important role in our environmental problems. Now, to address that, I think it's very much needed to take a food systems approach rather than just a rather narrow crop focus, a crop production focus. I think we should look at the entire food system. That means we have to include the consumption, which is part of the equation. And then next and the consumption, it means what human beings eat. And the next thing we have to consider is all the biomass that is being produced on arable land, on grassland, and also in natural waters, because that's the basis of our food. The production chain, the processing is important, and then, of course, all around the livestock sector, including fisheries, what comes from water. So if we take that broader perspective, we can talk about what circularity implies and what it should imply. I did that together with my colleague from Animal Production Systems, Professor Imke de Boer, 2 years back, and we wrote this booklet about principles for circularity in agriculture production. And we identified three main principles, and I think they will help to make better use of our biological resources for crops as well. The first one is that plant biomass is the basis of everything, and we should produce and use it primarily to feed human beings directly and not to feed animals. So use our good agricultural land to produce human food and not feed. That's the first principle. That leads to the highest resource efficiency of our land. The second principle is that we should avoid waste where possible, but sometimes byproducts and some waste will be unavoidable. And then we have to reuse all the byproducts in the entire food system with the right priorities. I'll come back to that in a minute. And the third principle is that, yes, we can have animals in our food system, probably much less than today, at least for Europe and other parts of the world. But let's use animals in the food system for what they're good at, and that is upgrading low opportunity cost feed, including grass, but also all sorts of byproducts that come with the food system and that we as humans cannot consume directly. Straw and other things that come with processing of our products. Now, what are the implications of these three principles? Very quickly, because you can easily fill a lecture with that, but these principles imply that we should use our good soils to produce biomass for human consumption and not for feed. That's what I already said. While currently about 40% of our cropland is used to produce feed, which could also be consumed directly by human beings, for instance, maize or wheat or barley or whatever. Secondly, we must avoid waste, but sometimes this is not possible. And certainly the byproducts we cannot avoid in many cases. And the pulp that comes with sugar extraction or with soybean processing. And in those cases, we have to reuse all byproducts with a good priority. And that includes the byproducts of human beings that end up in cities, our excreta and our waste products that accumulate and that are basically disposed in or near the cities. Recycle, reuse all these products with a good priority. First of all, I think to maintain our soils, because that is the basis of our food production. And that means maintaining a good soil organic matter content. Good is good enough. I'm not making a plea here for carbon sequestration as a purpose in itself. I'm just stressing this issue to maintain the soil quality, which requires a certain level of soil organic matter. The second priority is to fertilize our land, and that implies the cycling of nitrogen and phosphorus in our food system. So to reuse all the byproducts and the nutrients that are in these byproducts for the sake of fertilization. And that is then the first part of our fertilization, and it can be complemented. So on top of these organic sources, it can be complemented with the mineral fertilizers, but not the other way around. And then the other purpose of byproducts can be to use it as feed for livestock, because livestock has the beautiful capacity to upgrade low opportunity products, byproducts that we as humans cannot consume directly, to beautiful food and other products which are very useful for humans. That will inevitably lead to a new balance between consumption and production, a lower amount of animal proteins available for human consumption, but still there will be animal proteins available. So a new balance between consumption and production. That is the circularity principles applied to food systems. But I would like to add one more principle, and that is diversity. And that's my final slide. I think we have to cherish diversity in our food systems, because that can help to, particularly to, of course, to bring in nitrogen into the system through legumes, but it can also help to suppress, to some extent, pests and diseases, and it can help to maintain, or in some cases, increase biodiversity. Diversity can mean different things. In the top left corner, different crop cultivars of the same crop in one field. This is a potato field with two cultivars. It could be several of them. In the top right, you see intercropping, wheat and maize. And nowadays, we also have strip cropping as a new management way of managing crops, with multiple crops with small strips of 3 to 6 meters in one field. These are, say, spatial configurations of diversity, but in the bottom left corner, you see crop rotation, an example of crop rotation. So the diversity in time, the sequence of crops in time on one field. And then finally, in the bottom right corner, diversity at the landscape level. So the right crops and grassland, if you want, on the right soils, but also with a right, with proper spread across the landscape to serve different ecosystems. I think if we endorse these two principles, circularity and diversity, we have a good starting point to address the issue of biological resources to improve our crop efficiency. And I look forward to discuss this in more detail after the 3 presentations. And for now, I thank you for your attention.
Very nice, Dr. Martin. I think your subject is important, and in the end, just come to the same point. I think all of us will go. In the end, you need to be responsible with the soils you have to produce food or whatever, and to see how to use the products we extract from the soil. That's the main message I got from your talk. And this conservation system is the only way you have to keep feeding the world. That's the way it is. So thank you. We'll come up a few later with further discussions. But to keep on time, I want to invite Dr. Lixin to join us, and then we'll see his presentation, because I think he's going to be very complementary to the talk we did. He's going to show the challenge, the opportunities in a big country with great areas for cultivation. So we know that the challenge are different. Just wait for, yeah. Here we have Dr. Lixin. Thank you very much for joining us at night in China. So we know you did a good important sacrifice to be here. So we thank you very much for that, and are willing to see your presentation. Just take the stage.
Okay, can you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so I'm now starting to share my screen. Can you see that?
I will help you on that. I can see your presentation. It's perfect. All right.
Okay. Okay, now I start. Okay, thank you very much for the chairman. So it's my great pleasure to join this webinars. Today I will talk about integrated approach to improve crop nutrient use efficiency in China. So as Martin said, so his topic is general for the global, and my topic will concentrate on the problems and our solution in China. So I'm very happy to include one of my colleagues, Fuso Zhang. He is a great people who are working on this area and made a great achievement. So I will start with three topics: the challenges in China, and our strategy and the progress, and our future, what we can do and how we can do. So for China, it took us several hundred years to realize the dream of the food, the enough food. So it's hunger is really a great problem in old China, since until even at the end of the last century, we're still struggling for this. But nowadays, our grain production is already more than the grain demand. So it's at this point. So it's good sign, but we are still need to work on that to maintain the grain increasement with the population increasement. However, with the large increase of the grain production, we consumed a large amount of fertilizer in China. As you can see from this figure, actually our grain production increased about threefold or three times. However, we consumed 25 times of the chemical fertilizer. It means we are not really efficient. So as a consequence, the overuse of fertilizer, in particularly nitrogen fertilizer, that really damaged our environment in China, like water pollution, more in the nitrification by nitrogen and phosphorylated, and acidified our cropland mainly by overuse of nitrogen fertilizer, mainly ammonium-based nitrogen fertilizer, and also the nitrogen deposition is also great. For example, the increase almost twice in the last 20 years. So in this case, China is faced the situation. From one side, we would like to improve the nitrogen, improve the crop productivity, but we would like to really find a point we can really use less resource and also maintain the environmental sustainability. So the green part is our point. We would like to balance the food security, resource security, and the environment protection. So the strategy one, which has been already intensively used in China, is we breed the nutrient efficient crops. So for example, this is the nutrient use efficient crops in China. For example, maize, the yield and the nutrient efficiency increase dramatically. For example, our colleagues did a nice calculation to compare the old cultivars which released before the 2000 and the new cultivars which released after 2000. Then the yield increased, and in particularly the nitrogen use efficiency are also increased, and the nitrogen emission somehow decreased. So it's a good sign. We can use the smart crop cultivars to reduce the nitrogen leaching into the environment or nitrogen loss to the environment. The second strategy is we try to build up integrated soil crop systems to maintain or to realize the crop yield and high nutrient use efficiency simultaneously. This is also nice work from a group of Fuzhou that did very good cropping systems in parallel with the soil management and nutrient management. Then they realize the yield and the nutrient efficiency at the same time. And this is the nice case. This is a nice case for the maize, and this can be also done now in other crops like rice and wheat. So this is also a nice paper in Nature 2014. Then by the group, hard work from the group, you can really realize the high yield, which produce more with lower environmental cost. So the strategy 3 is how to empowering the smallhold farmers to realize these nice goals. This is also a great challenge. In China, we have millions of farmers that really had very low field area. So it's very hard to work with them to realize the nutrient use efficiency. So this is also the nice case which has been published by Fuzhou in 2018. So with the strategists, collaborate with the scientists and extension surveys, and also the agribusiness department. Then we can really done a great job with smallhold farmers and to benefit from these systems. So in the future, we think on one side, we would like to exploring the potentials for integrated the breeding and the management strategies to maximize the crop nutrient use efficiency. One side is the genotypes and also the optimal management. Then to fit the environment to realize the high yield, lower resource, and the lower environment cost. On the other hand, also as Martin already mentioned, we have to really think about the system approach for the future agriculture systems. We call it agriculture green development, which we need green production and integrate plant animal production. And also we should think about the consumers to make green products and also for green industry. Finally, we can achieve access to a green environment. So in the total, we can have ensure the food security, resource efficiency, environment sustainability, ecosystem service, human health, and also increase the farmer income. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll be very happy to answer any questions, or we can discuss later after all the speakers finished. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Lixin, thank you very much for your presentation. I think you put another subject on the table because Dr. Martin talked about diversity, circularity, and responsibility to use soil, and you put efficiency on that. It's very important to join all these concepts, and I think they're not like one to another, like not an opposite side. They go together if you know how to manage systems. That's the idea I'm trying to build here. So we put there for discussions for all members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you come back. You come back in a few minutes for our discussion. And now I want to ask our colleague Jorge Rodrigues to join us. Jorge, as I said, a professor at UC Davis, and he's going to put another important topic on the table about the connections of soil health and human health. I think it's a very timing subject, and we're willing to see your presentation, George. I have to say, you are in your home now. Not
Thank
in your
you.
home, in your house, in your home at the South. Yeah?
Thank you so much. Let's see if you can you see my presentation now?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay. All right. So, well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I have wonderful memories of my time in Piracicaba, so I'm really thrilled to be here. What I'm going to try to do today is to give you a little bit of a short overview of how we're studying biological inputs into soil systems. I took this picture some time ago here in California, close to my home, and I was thinking that there's nothing that makes people happier than seeing a field full of sunflowers. In fact, medical doctors, they have said in the past that there is a strong connection between you feeling happy and being healthy. So as a soil microbiologist, I start asking question, how can I ask a soil if the soil is happy or if the soil is healthy? So in order for me to ask this question, I have to revisit the idea of what's human health. And here's one of the definitions for you. But there are 2 points in this definition that are important. There are many, many different definitions. But this one, there's 2 words. One is the idea of being relative. So it's a relative state. Today I'm healthy. The next day I catch COVID-19 and I'm sick. And the other one is the idea of environment. So in order for you, the environment that surrounds you and makes you feel function well, your mind, your psychology, your relationships with others, your sociological health, and then your physiology or your biological health. Now, if we use this definition of human health, how can we translate that into soil health? So how can we bridge this idea of human and soil health? We soil microbiologists and soil scientists, in general, we're pretty good in explaining or identifying chemical properties and physical properties associated with soil. I can say, oh, the pH is such and such, or the nutrient level is such and such, and that makes it a good soil for me to grow my crops. But we have very limited information about the biological properties of soil. We basically say, oh, there are too many microbes there, and then there's not much more we can do. And that's what we wanted to change. We should start paying attention to that in order to develop a soil that's healthy. Because I cannot ask the soil if the soil is happy or healthy, what I can do is to measure stress level. So you and me, when we are stressed, our health status decline. And what happens to you is that you change your hormonal levels. There's some hormones that will change the concentration and then they'll increase or decrease. The same thing will happen for microbes, not with hormones. What microbes will do is to use transcriptional factors or sigma factors or genes that regulates other genes. So today what I'm going to give you is a small example of the work that we have been doing with 2 of those genes. One is for carbon starvation, and this is the RPOS. The RPOS, this gene becomes activated and it turns off more than 300 other genes. It's basically telling the cell, don't grow because there's no carbon outside. How we can learn from this information and with regards to carbon in soil. Carbon is such an important component of soil systems. And the other one is it's regarding to heat stress. I learned today that the temperature in Piracicaba is 96 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's really, really hot today. So probably some of the microbes in the soils in Piracicaba are in some kind of heat stress at this point. So I'm going to touch base on that. The heat stress one is this gene that what helps is to fold the proteins inside of the cell. Now, because from the previous work that we have done in the Amazon forest for quite some time, and I apologize for putting a long list of publications here, but what I wanted to do is to prove to you that there are no doubts right now the microbial communities, microbes in soil, they're suffering from the consequence of forest destruction. And there are changes that happen. So here's an example for you of a forest and a pasture, and there's a big blob of DNA that's missing from the pasture sample because the microbes are gone. But we also learn from the same work that the pastures have a much higher carbon concentration in soils. This means that in the forest, most of the carbon is above ground, are like trees and leaves, but most of the carbon in the forest soil, it's hard carbon, difficult carbon to be processed by the microbes and then lower concentration. In the pasture samples, because there's grass, you have a much larger carbon output. Now, what can we learn from this information that was done in the Amazon and used in agricultural fields here in California? So we did this. We tested the idea of the RPOS and the RPOE, and this is metagenomes. These are total DNA that was sequenced from those from two environments, and you can see that the RPOS, the one related to the carbon, we have a much higher number of those genes present in the forest sample in comparison to the pasture. It's basically saying that the microbes in the forest are starving for carbon. So those genes are much higher in numbers there. The other way around goes for the RPOE. The RPOE, I told you, it's related to stress of temperature. And this gene is significantly higher in the pasture samples. If you go to the Amazon and you measure the temperature of the pasture soil, it will be 3 to 5 degrees centigrades higher than in the forest. So you can have information about the stress level of this organism. Again, how can we translate this to California? Well, here in the UC Davis, we have the Century experiment. And the Century experiment is an experiment that's going on for 100 years. And then we have different inputs. We have conventional versus manure compost and reduced tillage of the environment. So we tested, but done from the plant side, not from the microbes. The microbes, we knew that they responded the same way they responded in the Amazon. But what happens to the plants? So we had tomatoes. In those tomatoes, when we measure the hormonal levels in tomatoes, we see that jasmonic acid, one of the hormones associated with resistance to diseases, is much higher in the organic system. So it's basically telling us that the conventional system, the plants are way more stressed than it would be in organic system. Maybe the conventional system, the plants look a little more beautiful because they're greener, but in some way they are not as healthy as you think. Now, the next question for us is, what is the connection of this with human health, right? Well, we don't have a connection yet, but we know for sure from our preliminary results that organic inputs increase nutrient levels, at least for our tomatoes, increase the micronutrient concentration, increase the vitamin levels. So I'm not saying here that we should convert everything into organic production. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that we need to start considering the incorporation of management practices that will recycle all the organic material that we have been generated in order to make a production system that is healthy for the soil, is healthy for the plant, and is healthy for the humans who are consuming that. So this slide, what we have been using is machine learning algorithms here in California, and we are showing some of the factors that are associated with the fruit yield of the tomato. And you can note here that organic matter is an important one, as it is inorganic nitrogen and phosphorus, as some of the other speakers mentioned as well, in order to have a production. We also have been using the same algorithms in machine learning to understand what will be the genes that you can use as indicators of soil health in a system. With that, that is all I have to say. I have to make an announcement here. We're putting together a book for kids. We want to educate kids in science, in agriculture. And the guy with a toucan that you see here, with a microscope in the field, I don't know how the person did this. It's me. So it's a book that we're releasing for kids to educate them about science. Thank you very much.
Very nice talk, George. Thank you very much. So now I have a lot of things to put together. Very nice to see the connections and to see the tools you are developing to measure these things. It's really challenging to measure systems. Yeah, normally you do it by yields, by whatever, soil quality, but soil quality itself is a very challenging subject to measure. So we're going to discuss everything in a minute. I'll just use now myself 5 minutes to give some words for you about the concept that I think is going to mix all these concepts. I think it's going to link together the subjects. Okay, thank you. I'll see you in a minute. My time to share my screen. I hope it works perfectly. So, in a minute. You have a problem now? Yep. Yeah. Now, yes. Let's see. Share screen. I think now all of you can see my presentation, yeah? Okay. The idea here is to present you a little bit of the work we develop in our soil science department at the Zalki. What you do here is try to put in a table new tools, new ideas, new theory about soil microbiology in a way that you can manage soil better. Because as George said, the other colleagues also agree, we can measure chemical properties much better than soil, than biological part of the soil. Not because we didn't do it, because we are learning how to measure soil biology now. And the important question that... Okay, you just got a message that you have a problem to see the presentations? Yeah?
Yes.
I think like this is better. All right, I will keep like this. It's better to guarantee the quality. The main question that you have to answer is how do you make plants that will permeate other discussions? And you have several tools to make plants involving different components of the management. You have worldwide, like nutritional aspects of plant, climate, stress and protections, whatever. And you have also biological resources that can use, apply, and improve the use of these resources in modern agriculture. So what you try to do is to see how the connections between the microbiological resources occur with other components of the management. So if you use better the biological resources, if you use better the concepts of microbiology and biological part of the system, not only soil, but the interface soil-plant, I think you have opportunity to improve the nutritional aspect of plants. We can make plants much more resilient to climate changes, to climate stress. We can protect plants better. We can harness like the genetic potential of plants. We can easily facilitate mechanization because it has a very strong connection with soil quality. The idea is that the living soil is made of they call it microbiome. The idea is that part of the soil is made of living organisms that you call the soil microbiome, a very complex system made of several species, different sizes, different metabolisms, in a way that you have a web of biological activity in the soil. That's the most part difficult of the soil to measure, because it's very difficult to see what kind of microbes you have there. It's not only a microscope visualization, we need the genetic information, as George just presented to you. We need the knowledge about indicators of soil quality, considering the biological part. So we're dealing with thousands of different species living in a single gram of soil. So in a single gram of soil, we have millions of organisms encompassed in different species. So targeting this soil microbiome is very challenging, very active in agriculture. And I guess it's very important to target the soil microbiome because it has several important questions related to soil quality. It's very much involved in nutrient cycling. Once that microbes can access part of nutritional nutrients in soil that plants are not able to do alone. So microbes can solubilize phosphorus, can fix nitrogen, whatever. All the features that plants are not able to do. The soil activity is linked to structure of soil, formation of aggregates. It means that it has a balance between oxygen and water in the soil that's very dependent on soil activity. It depends very much on soil for soil formation, for soil quality, and how soil serves for plant development. And they will also see several connections between plants and microbes. So plants will use the biological resources in soil, mainly in the rhizosphere, that we're not going to target this issue today, but the rhizosphere is a way that plants can connect to soil biology. We're using this for protection, using this for plant growth promotion. It means that plants and microbes has a long story of evolution, so they are complementary metabolically. They know how to talk to each other, and they take advantage. Both plants use microbes for their benefits, and microbes use plant resource for their activity in soil. So understanding better the central point here, understanding better the central position of soil microbiome can make us more successful to explore the soil as an entire entity where plants develop and plants present its potential for productions. But what happens is that George just showed you that, and I'm using the term that we see in the literature. It happens that in the under agricultural system, normally the soil microbiome is depleted. It means that when you transform the soil, you lose the biological quality of soil. Because you have in agricultural fields different composition of soils as it was for the millions of years before it was used for agriculture. When you look to the agricultural soil, you have a different pH, you have a different diet of organic matter. So you see that different organisms are not feeding like in the same way they did for the last 1,000 years in the native soils. It means that when you deplete the soil microbiology, you lose functions in the system. Losing functions in the systems means that the biodiversity, the biological part of the soil is under its potential in most of agricultural soil. So technically, considering this aspect, it means that you can use better soil biology, so in a way that you get more advantage of this present system that every soil has. How do you manage biological part of the soil? How do you do biological management of soils, or how do you use different management that touch soil biology, making it more functional, more equilibrated, more active in the agricultural systems? It's a fully open question. It permeates other talks. We can see in other talks how important is the use of diversity, the use of organic amendments and whatever. But I try to summarize the opportunity we have to make the soil biological management in this slide. Here we have again the same terms that was used by Dr. Martin, like crop rotation, the intercrop cultivation, integration of systems, how to make the systems more circular, more based on diversity. We have also new technologies deriving from different aspects of the management, like fertilization technology, the organominerals, organic residues, as George just talked about it. The pesticides technology, of course, it's very important interaction between chemical molecules in the soil with this living system. And you have also the biological products, like of course you have science being doing in this area, you have technology being developed in this area. So you have plenty of different biological products in the market that are there to harness, to empower the biological systems of the soil. So the idea is that you use all these possibilities to make a system that is more comfortable for microbes to perform, to do the functions we expect them, and then plants will better develop in the system. Just to mention, I think the biological market in agriculture is a very important area. Yesterday, we had a great discussion about that, so people can see the talk of yesterday. It's in Portuguese, but it's available. And the biological part of the marketing agriculture is being growing in different areas. We have inoculants for plants nutritional supply. We have biodefensives that will be a subject for the webinar on Thursday. We have also biological conditioners of soil that have different ways of action. So we have a plenty of different products that can help us to give soils a better situation concerning its biological activity, biological composition, and a better use of soil microbiome in agriculture. And my final slide, I think, is only to say the phrase we try to work on. So my group at Exalc USP will work to prove it and to give you more data on this kind of affirmation. It says associations between plants and microbes can buffer the agricultural systems, protecting it against stress and making it less dependent of artificial supply of plant elements. It means that working on soil microbiology is preparing a soil as a more comfortable systems where plants can grow and can produce better, so you can get more yield and more sustainability. With that, I want to thank you for your attention. And I think I have to join my colleagues, so I have a different points to discuss at this moment. Maybe I can ask our support to put our colleagues in the screen now. I think it was not arranged. We know the subject of each one was going to talk, but we didn't see the presentation, didn't see exactly what was going to be said. And I think it was very nice. We have a great story now to discuss. If you agree, I will keep it open. If you want to say or comment something, just get your microphone and start saying. I think everyone has time to do that. You have plenty of time. And we elected some thematics for the discussion, some issues to discuss. And the first one, I think that will permeate all the talks, is agriculture efficiency. How do we put together yield and sustainability? So I need a candidate now to start. I can start with 2 words, and then you go on. Most of people that when they don't know about the agricultural system, they don't know about production system, they think that you have to choose, or you choose yield, or you choose sustainability. Do you think it's true? Or you can put these 2 words together, like yield is a factor of sustainability. Can we allow worldwide today, with the size of agricultural land that we have, that we expect to not open new areas, can you allow areas with low yield? It's feasible, it's sustainable to keep soil like this? Yeah, Dr. Martin.
I think it's inevitable that there is some, what we call trade-off between feeding billions of people and what is best for our environment and for our biodiversity. I mean, we have surpassed a number of people on our planet that there is no trade-off between the two, I believe. And it will become increasingly challenging if our population increases to 9 or 10 billion, particularly if we are not going to change our consumption, at least in say the industrialized countries, our high level of animal protein consumption. So I do believe there is some unavoidable trade-off. Of course, the challenge is to minimize that trade-off, to balance the 2 objectives as good as possible, and to produce enough at acceptable levels of impact on the environment and use of natural resources. So that would be my first response to your question.
So, Fernando, I would like to ask, or I would like to maybe add 1 sentence. So, particularly in China, I think the yield, the high yield, is part of sustainability. As far as I think, yeah. So, of course, we can use a nice way to think about the environment if we sacrifice the yield, but this cannot be sustainable, particularly in developing country. So since we have a large population, we have high demand of the food. So, and technically, or from the science and the technology, it's possible to synchronize or to realize the high yield and then low environment cost. It's possible to realize simultaneously. So I think the sustainability includes the high yield, the environment, human health, and many aspects. Okay.
That's how I see the same thing. I see yield as an important component of our formula, because of course it depends very much on the size of property, size of the country, demand for food that you have. But I think like in Brazil, we have now in Brazil almost 80 million hectares of arable land or cultivable land. Don't use arable land anymore. Cultivated area, more or less, not general number. And we have a double of this area in pastures. So we don't have to think or consider opening new areas because we have a lot of environmental concerns. We have to preserve that, but you can convert pasture areas to agricultural areas. So that's the challenge. And this challenge only makes sense if the people involved in this activity, they get some money. No one's going to use like biological products to produce less. It means you're losing economical efficiency, like economical viability. Of course, it's a complex thematics, but when you think like this, you have to consider that if you don't have yield, sustainability is very difficult to be achieved because people are going to use more areas in a less efficient way. I think these two things are together, and they think biological properties of the soil, biological properties of the plant, and how they connect to each other. They are mandatory to join these two concepts. Because all this circularity or this complementarity or this biodiversity in the system is very much represented by the life in the soil. That's not only the plant, the other components of this is that make all this engine works, how they connect to each other, they make a complementary function. How do you see that in your studies, George? Because I know you have a great story about the comparison between forest and pastures, forest and the agricultural area. How do you see this changing the complementarity of the system?
So for us here, I'm trying to use the information that we gain from changing land use that goes from a natural system to a changed system like pasture. But we're trying to apply this to California fields. Part of my responsibility as professor here is to help California agriculture. So we here in California, we have developed a program that is called the Soils Health Program. And it's not like as you said, it's not like the government is giving money to the farmers to have more inputs, organic inputs into their soils. But it's a way for the farmers to connect with the university, with researchers doing research related to soil health. And then together they can devise programs that, let's say that you are a farmer working you have a dairy farm. Well, you have a dairy farm, you produce a lot of manure. If you produce a lot of manure, there are two options. Or you spray this manure back into soil, or you make those big lagoons that will release a lot of methane. So you don't want that to happen. So it's better to have, or you can have like in the Netherlands, they have anaerobic digesters, which is a great way for you to generate energy and still make some money on the side. So we're trying to do that here in California. And I think that is a way for us to break the cycle of just exploiting the soil and not make it sustainable for future generations. So,
very nice. Dr. Martin, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with those what George just said, but I would like to add that I think we should also consider to re-establish a certain balance between livestock and plant production. So where there is really a misbalance at a certain regional scale, then I think, the Netherlands is an example. We run into problems. And of course, we can start to process the manure then, as we're doing with anaerobic digestion or other technologies. But I think still from a sustainability perspective, we first import the feed, and then we use a lot of energy to process the manure. And then what do we do with the processed manure? That's another question. So I think that there is some unbalance in the system there that we need to re-establish. And a good mix of plant and animal production at a landscape level is probably a good condition to better score in terms of environmental sustainability.
There is important.
It's easy.
All right. There is an.
I finished by saying it's easier said than done, as we are experiencing in the Netherlands, for instance.
It's always like this. The doing is has much more components to the decision point. But there is a question that goes in line with this first one. That's how do we measure this kind of efficiency? Like how do we measure circularity? How do we measure crop efficiency? How do we measure biological part of the soil? George just showed some tools that we have now, like genetic tools. We know that in science you do it. It's very nice. How do you measure? And I would like to put you one other point that is even more important, considering the audience you have. How do we measure and show for people involved in the activity if they are doing right or not the process? It's open for ideas.
So I can answer for myself from this side. I don't know what the right tools at this point for us to measure properly the efficiency of our agricultural systems. I think we're still trying to understand what it is, specifically from the biological point of view. We have, as I showed you, we have some metrics there, that chemistry and physics, but not much of any other biological systems. So I think at the end, what's going to happen is that we're going to be able to identify some markers, and I'm not talking about only genetic or biological markers. I'm talking about physical markers, like very simple things like aggregate formation in soil as a way for you to establish if this soil is structured well, it prevents erosion and things like that. From the other side, as Martin pointed out, it's the diversity of the system. So how are you doing rotation systems that increase the diversity of the microbial communities, or the communities of soil, the nutrients that we're recycling in soil? So it's a little more complex than just identify a single a metric, but I think it's possible. If we got to if we now have buildings and airplanes, I think we can, go back to soil and redesign the way we utilize soil systems.
It's very challenging. I know. What I have is the feeling that the idea, the concept, is already permeating. At least in Brazil, I know a little bit. It's permeating the producers, the farmers. They know that sustaining the system is important. It's not only extracting the crops. So that's the idea. They have the feeling, but they need and they want tools to measure it. Maybe Martin, do you have any idea how to measure circularity on the system?
Well, that's not a trivial question, but I think it's always important to consider environmental, of course, economic criteria, because the farmers need to survive. So I fully agree with Lik Sing that we need to consider the economics. But if we focus on the environment, I think we should always have a look at emissions or environmental impact per hectare. That is one. And the other is per kilogram of product. Because in the end, we need to feed the people. People want food, need food, and they don't want to go to bed hungry. So it's we have to produce a total amount of food. How much depends on our diet, apart from the number of people. But to produce that amount of food, I think then the emissions per kilogram of product become very important. next to the emissions per hectare. So considering both, I feel is critical. Now, measuring environmental impact or sustainability, etc. Sometimes you can directly monitor an indicator at field or perhaps at landscape level, but sometimes this is very difficult and very costly. I mean, George has introduced a topic which is almost impossible to measure because the soil life is so rich and we lack so much knowledge that how to characterize the quality of soil life. So sometimes just monitoring measures, crop management aspects, is perhaps the best thing we can do. And maintaining a certain level of soil organic matter in one way or the other is perhaps in many cases a good enough indicator to be sure that certain qualities of the soil are served. The other thing is maybe on nutrient emissions. It's very hard to measure everywhere the local emissions of nutrients. But if we adhere certain management practices or standards, then we can be pretty sure that these emissions are served, if not at the field, then at the landscape level.
Very nice. I'll make a question from the audience, only one, because you have our time is just running out. So, Gabriel Silva Pires, George, it's for you.
Okay.
Years ago, I had seen a lecture from Embrapa Cerrados, an institution in Brazil. Yeah, so you can see it on the screen now. That they measure soil biological health by measuring amount of two enzymes, which is the benefits from our approach.
So I know well what Gabriel is talking about. In fact, I know the person well. It's Yeda. She has done a wonderful work on trying to understand soil health from the perspective of activity. At the end, soils are alive because something is going on there, because they're active. And so she decided to go towards the measuring enzymes. And it's an easy way for us to do this. We have done the same here. And in fact, when we measure beta-glucosidase, one of the enzymes that she has measured as well, we are able to identify the genes that were related to the activity of the beta-glucosidase. So it's a great approach. I don't know if we're going to be able later on to. I'm very optimistic that we're going to be able at the end to use some kind of metrics. Could be an enzyme that the farmer will take to the field and then measure right there what's the activity of the organism in a certain during the crop growth. So I don't know if this is going to happen, but that's the way I would like to think about it.
It's perfect. That's the feeling we have here. It's a methodology that's growing a lot in Brazil, so people are using it a lot to try to measure soil quality. So, my colleagues, I think it's time to give you the words so we can give your final words in our event. I think you did the best possible in the time you had for the discussion. It's a broad theme. Of course, I could spend like hours here discussing different points, but I think we did a good job. So I will start with, I'll follow the order of the presentation. We start with Dr. Martin for the final words, then Lixin, George, and then I close the section.
I was going to suggest to take the reversed order this time because I don't need to be the first.
We can do that if you want, no problem.
Yeah, please do. Please
okay,
do.
George, then we start.
Well, I don't have much to say. I think I'm very pleased that we have started this discussion. I think there's an opportunity for us there as a group of the A5 Alliance to start making important efforts into conservation, sustainability, and production, and food, right? Food to the world. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Dr. Lixin.
That's great. It's really nice discussion. So I would like to say the systemic thinking or systemic approach is very important for the future. And also the collaboration between different nations and the collaboration between scientists from different areas should be also very important. So this is also the way how this system can work together and make more efficient.
All right.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, well, thank you very much to the colleagues. I think there's no simple solution. I mean, I presented two concepts: circularity, diversity. I believe it can bring important things, and I'll come back to that in a minute. On measuring soil health, soil quality, I mean, it's complicated. In the Netherlands, we have horticulture, which is hugely productive, growing on hydroponics without any soil, without any microbiology, and the plants are thriving. So, and of course, I know agriculture systems in soil are different, but it's just to say that plants don't eat microbes or bacteria or fungi or whatever. So it's important, I think, to understand better what is the specific role of microbes in the sustainability of our system, either to release nutrients or to suppress plant pests and diseases, etc. Coming to circularity and diversity, here I think it's important to advance the research on what these two aspects can bring. Two examples: circularity. How circular can we become? Is it possible to, in systems, once they have sufficient phosphorus in the soils, to do without any external inputs? In the end, we will have to, because phosphorus is a finite resource, which means we have to recycle all the phosphorus from cities, from human waste, etc. So I think that will be an enormous challenge. And on diversity, I think it's very important to understand what a good design of fields and of landscapes, of farms and of landscapes can bring in terms of pest and disease suppression. So we can do with much less pesticides than we do today. I think this is still early days. We know that certain things are possible with rotations, with intercropping, but for instance, strip cropping or pixel farming or other new developments, what they can bring with new machines that perhaps help us with that, robotics. I think that's a whole new area where a lot more research is needed to understand what diversity can bring exactly to do with less chemical crop protection.
Perfect. Very nice. I would like to thank you, all of you, for the participation. And on my final words, I like just to mention, like, I think humans did a great job, like making agriculture a feasible activity, exploring areas, using soil. And if you look at the discussion we had today, we are like years in front of the system that you have now. So we are years thinking that if you don't understand the whole scenario, the whole complementarity of the members that make agriculture works, from the farmer to the plants, to the microbes, to the other plants, to the animals, so we're not going further. We have to understand the whole system. And that was the main subject that we tried to englobe in our presentations here. I think this is science in its plenitude. So it's science how the people think differently, create things, create opportunities, and make the world better. That's our mission to do here. And I thank you for did our job for today. So thank you very much for the presentations, for the time you had, for George to wake up very early in the morning. We know that's very early in California, and also Lixin to be late in the night connected to talk to us. So it's very nice to see that scientists are always ready to show what they think. Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to finish our event for today. And just to mention, I have a final word that I have to say, that in behalf of the A5 Star Alliance, we thank you very much for joining the webinar, the audience. And don't miss tomorrow and Thursday, you have two other sessions. Tomorrow is going to be related to animal feeding, and the day after is going to be biocontrol of pests and disease. Very nice, very complimentary, and thank you guys. I don't know if I say very good night, very good day, so enjoy your time, it's better.
Congratulations with your anniversary.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.